Hello everyone, welcome back. Wanted to go over a quick problem on independent and dependent variables. This is a problem from your homework from before break, and it seemed like it tripped up a few people in identifying the independent and dependent variables, so I thought I'd make a quick video to go over it. So here we're told that Sammy drives at a rate of 40 miles per hour for 3 hours. How many miles does she travel in 3 hours? And identify the independent and dependent variables and explain how they relate to each other. Okay, so a lot going on here. So I'm just going to start by writing down some of the information that we know. The first thing we're told is that she's driving at a rate of 40 miles per hour. So I'm just going to pull that out and hang on to that for a minute. We'll focus on that first, and then we'll answer the second part here. 40 miles per, I'll say 1 hour, just so we have a quantity there. 40 miles per hour, 40 miles per 1 hour. Okay, so we're given a rate here, right? 40 miles per 1 hour, that's a unit rate. And anytime we're given a unit rate, that tells us exactly what the variables are. So in this case, our variables here are miles and hours, right? We have distance, and we have time. So those are our variables here. A lot of you in your homework, when asked about the independent variable, you said that the independent variable is 40 miles per hour. 40 miles per hour. And typically, when we're given a rate, that's not a variable. A rate is typically not a variable. It can be in very specific circumstances, but for our sake, we're just going to say it's not a variable. Instead, the rate tells us what the variables are, right? So we have two quantities that are involved in a rate. We've got 40 miles and 1 hour. So we can say that those are our variables here. So we have distance and we have time. Distance and time. I'll write those out again. Okay, so now we have to decide which one is independent and which one is dependent. And to do that, we just have to think about which one of these depends on the other one. So if we imagine that we're driving on the road at 40 miles per hour, say we've got our cruise control on and we're just cruising. At 40 miles per hour, the distance that we travel, well, that's going to depend on the amount of time that we drive for, right? If we drive for 1 hour, obviously we're going to go 40 miles. If we drive for an hour and a half, we'll go 60. If we drive for 2 hours, we'll go 80 miles, right? So because our distance depends on how long we travel at this speed, our distance is our dependent variable. And our time is our independent variable. And in most situations, when you're given the variable time, that's usually going to end up being your independent variable. It's not always going to be, but it's always it's usually going to end up being your independent variable. And so that's a nice thing to keep in mind, that when you're given time, you should always double check it, but it's usually going to end up being your independent variable. So here we've identified our variables. Distance is dependent and time is independent. So now we just have to figure out how many miles Sammy will travel in 3 hours. Well, we can do that using a proportion here. We have 40 miles in 1 hour. I can draw up a proportion here. I want to know how many miles. I'll say m miles in 3 hours. How many miles will we drive in 3 hours? Well, to do that, we can use our scale factor method by saying that, okay, I know that to go from 1 hour to 3 hours, I multiplied by 3. And I have to do the same thing to the top and bottom to keep these fractions equal, so I multiply by 3. 40 times 3 gives me 120 miles. 120 miles in 3 hours. So a lot of you got that. A lot of you got the 120 miles in 3 hours. That part wasn't typically the hard part for people. Where people got tripped up was this identifying the variables and which one is independent and which one is dependent. So again, just keep in mind that whenever you're given a rate, that tells you what the variables are, right? The quantities that are involved in your rate are the variables. Okay, so now we've got this last part that says explain how the variables relate to each other. And I think a lot of you guys kind of maybe overthought this one a little bit. Here, the unit rate that we're given, this 40 miles per hour, describes that relationship to us. It describes it, right? It tells us exactly what that relationship is. It says that for every hour that we drive, well, we'll travel 40 miles. And that's really all that we need to say to define that relationship between those two variables. And we can say that in a sentence, or we could write an equation to express that as well. So let's write an equation here. I'll erase this proportion here. Let's write an equation to express that. I'll show you how to do that. So first we have to define our variables. So I'm going to say that miles we'll use M. And we'll say that hours we will use H. Okay, so because our dependent variable is distance, it's miles, I'm gonna put that by itself. M equals, because that's going to be determined by some quantity for the independent variable multiplied by some coefficient, right? So I know that for every hour I travel, I am going to go 40 miles. So if I travel for 1 hour, well, I multiply that 1 hour by 40 to get 40 miles, right? That makes sense. If I travel for 2 hours, I multiply that 2 by 40 to get 80 miles. So we can kind of see the pattern here, that this M, our number of miles, is always going to be 40 times the number of hours that we drive. So this equation right here, M equals 40H, describes this relationship between the two variables. It's saying that whatever M is, it's always going to be 40 times what H is. So if we travel for 4 hours, let's say H is 4 hours, well, M is 40 times 4, or 160 miles, right? And so that's how we can express that relationship with an equation. Okay, I hope this helps to kind of clarify some things. As always, if you are still having trouble with this, please reach out. I would love to meet with you and help you out with this. So, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.